Illinois, and Patricia lived in Westchester, both suburbs of Chicago, as we previously mentioned. The two drove together to pick up Renee, who lived in West Chicago. Renee had told her mother earlier that morning that she had planned to be home to cook dinner for her husband sometime in the evening. Okay.
Yeah.
So
then what happens? Come on, tell me more.
The three of them stop at a store to pick up some sunscreen and then plan to spend the day at the dunes. The Indiana Dunes, which is on Lake Michigan, in case you don't know.
I've seen pictures of it. It looks kind of nice.
Yeah, it was at that time the Indiana Dunes State Park. It is now the Indiana Dunes National Park or National Reserve. I can't remember.
National Monument.
I think it's
something.
reserve.
Something like that. It's a national park now.
It's national something.
Yeah, but it was a state park at the time.
That means you can't do meth or have guns.
It's a safe space.
Yeah.
It's a safe space, yeah. They arrived at about 10 a.m., which seems like a quick drive to me, but, it was 1966, so maybe traffic wasn't as bad as it is now in Chicago. It's reported that there were some 9,000 visitors to that beach on the 2nd. It was a holiday. It was the Saturday before...
It's 4th of July weekend.
4th of July, yeah, so it was busy, obviously. They happened to set up next to a couple on the beach that noticed them, so they had, a big beach blanket and everything like that.
One question about Indiana. I should have looked this up, actually, when I was researching, but I never actually looked at the park itself to see how long...
It's
Is it
miles.
like miles and miles and miles long?
Yeah, it's miles and miles and miles long.
So there's multiple parking lots and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. It sounded to me like it's a big place.
It is.
And by the way, Lake Michigan is a big lake.
It is.
I don't know if
It's
people
huge.
know this.
Yeah.
Very big.
It's really big, yeah. So, 9,000 people over the course of a day on a Saturday on a holiday weekend. It's not as though you're, packed shoulder to shoulder, but it's also not as though there's no one there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But miles and miles of beach, it's 9,000 people. It's not that much, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't that crowded.
Well, and, just because they were visiting the beach, Lake Michigan's a big boating area, so that also includes the people who were just coming to park their cars to abandoned, and there was this couple that sat next to where the ladies set up.
I think it's they were near another couple, if I remember correctly, because they were either near a tree or trying to use the shade of the tree. So that's why they set up shop where they did, about 100 yards away from the water, I think it is.
Yep, exactly.
Well, with me, it's I always stake out a nice little spot in the beach, and then immediately a big family of 17 comes and plunks themselves down right next to me.
Yeah.
For no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
This is why I don't go to the beach with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm a magnet for that kind of thing.
Luckily, I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
This couple noticed these three young women, and they reported that the women were just hanging out, and then at about noon, they all three entered the water together. They were swimming around, and then maybe a boat came up to them, and they all three got on the boat and went away.
Because, by the way, chicks love boats.
Some chicks do love boats. That's true.
They do.
Yeah. There were a lot of boats, but this particular boat, this couple said, was about 14 to 16 feet long. It was white. It had a blue interior and an outboard motor. There was a man driving the boat who was described as I love this, quote, tan with a head full of coal-colored curls, unquote.
Meaning a foreigner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wearing a beach jacket.
I know, he's always wearing a beach jacket. I don't know what a beach jacket exactly is, to be honest with you, but I've seen
It's
on
like a windbreaker.
Oh, okay. I just seen it on a dozen different web pages about this.
And
It's always a beach jacket.
I had the same thing, except I actually came across one site that said that he was wearing a life jacket. Which would be smart
Makes
if
sense
he's
if
in
you're
a
driving a boat, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now this was the Trimaran, correct? This particular boat, the white boat?
It was a tri-hull, but not a trimaran.
They didn't know.
Is a sailboat with 3 separate hulls.
Okay.
And a tri-hull is just a single hull boat, but it's got like those 2 big grooves in the hull.
So this one, they don't know. This is we need to pause on that because we'll talk more about what you're talking about in a second.
It confused me.
Because that's jumping ahead. This is literally the report that this couple gave of this boat, which is where we're at right now.
And they actually used the words coal-colored curls.
They did, apparently. Yeah.
Nothing about a foreign accent?
They just saw the guy.
They were like 100 yards away, but you can still hear that foreign accent.
Oh, stop it, Joe.
No.
Okay.
No, he was just a tan guy with black colored hair.
I've been researching the Lindbergh kidnapping, okay? Come on.
Okay. The couple spent the rest of the day at the beach, sitting next to these 3 young women's clothes. And when it was getting to be dusk, they started packing up and noticed that the women hadn't come back yet. And so they were able to find a park ranger and point out, hey, there's some stuff here. And there were 3 young women here, and they left at noon and they haven't been back yet. And then gave also the report of they got on this boat with this guy and we haven't seen them since. So, and the park ranger said, okay, well, I don't know, maybe they forgot about it, or maybe they, went off to a party boat or something. So he collected their stuff and then kept it in the office for
by the way,
a couple days.
I had never seen their names. I presume the name of this couple is just lost.
I think it's just been.
I actually have seen it.
Oh, their
and
actual names?
I found it, and then like an hour later, I was like, "Oh my god, I need to write that down." And I totally didn't do it.
And then find that webpage again. Good luck.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
But it's they're not any famously known names of any
well, and there's no.
impact to the
there's
case.
there's no reason for them to be thrown into a spotlight or have their name tossed around, because this is one of those cases that people have been really intrigued by and feel it was a little mismanaged. And so in those kinds of cases, I totally respect not giving out the first witness information, because people are constantly going to be
50
badgering
years later.
them. Yeah, or their family or whatever, saying, I'm sure you guys know more, and that's just horrible. And they were just trying to be good Samaritans, so why give that information out?
Okay, well, we'll call them.
We don't need to call them anything, because
No.
that's their last
That's
appearance
it.
in our case.
Yeah.
We never know. We might talk about them again. So we'll call them
Not
the
in
Joneses.
this one. Okay, the stuff that the women had left behind did include purses and towels and stuff like that. And as I said, the Rangers stored them in their office until the 4th, when Patricia's father called the ranger station to ask about his daughter. And it turns out missing persons reports had been filed for all 3 young women over the weekend when they didn't come back on the night of the 2nd. And, this is one of those situations where it's tough because they're all adults, technically.
Yeah, they can do what they want, and so they might just run off.
I don't know how seriously it was taken. I mean, the father of Patricia is the person who had to call the ranger station at their last known location. The cops didn't even
though missing
reach
persons
out.
report had been filed on all 3.
Yeah, the cops didn't reach out and say, hey, did you guys find a body or something? I mean, even something as cursory as that, they didn't do. So
It was a different age.
it was a different age, yeah. When the Rangers get the call, they say, what were the names of the other persons? And this is, when you would go to state parks, you still have to do this. You have to pay for parking. So you fill out a little slip of paper
With your license number on
with your
it.
license number and the spot that you parked in at this particular one, the spot you parked in, and then you hang your little thing in the window and you drop your money with the other thing in the box. So
The big cast iron box with a slot in it.
yeah, so they were able to actually find the record of Anne's car, which happened to still be parked in the same spot. And as luck would have it, or not, her keys happened to be with the belongings that they'd been holding.
That kind of
So-
makes sense, huh?
It totally makes sense, yeah. And there were additional things that they found in the car, just personal effects, additional clothes and stuff like that. The articles that they left on the beach, in case anybody's wondering, Anne had left her denim shorts, a polo shirt, her shoes, and her bathing cap, just a swim cap, a comb, and her thermos. Patricia had left a yellow robe, sunglasses, a transistor radio, a white towel, and her wallet that had $5 in it. And then Renee had
$5,
left...
that's like $1,000 today, right?
Not quite.
Not quite, but it's not nothing. Renee had left her beach towel, her shorts, a blouse, cigarettes, sunscreen, 25 cents, and her purse that had $55 worth of checks in it.
Now that's actually
That is a
size. It's
significant-
about 400
Yeah,
bucks
it's
worth
not
of checks.
nothing.
That's not something
Yeah.
you just randomly leave.
Yeah. As I said, more stuff was found in the car. Nothing of any...
A couple of
Nope.
38s.
No.
A
No,
grenade.
no.
But,
No,
other
just,
than that.
like coats and probably...
Regular stuff that you find in somebody's car.
Probably
tire
Patricia's
jack.
actual clothes, because she had just left her robe. Things like that.
So nothing out of the ordinary.
Nothing out of the ordinary, yeah. That was all the searching they did on the 4th, because, holiday and stuff like that. Whatever, missing persons, whatever, we'll put that off.
We gotta light some fireworks off.
Yeah.
Drink some
so
beer.
finally on the 5th, they launched their full-scale investigation. And I'm going to full-scale air quotes, because there was a full-scale investigation for about a couple days.
Yeah.
And then it was just two 2 investigators who never even met each other were in charge of the rest of this.
In different districts,
Yeah.
I believe it was.
In different states.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Probably
Of this. It was
Illinois and
Illinois and
Indiana.
Indiana. Yeah. And it was, one state patrolman who was in charge of finding backgrounds, and then another investigator.
And they
that was
never even
it.
met up for coffee or
They
anything.
they never met in person.
So weird.
Ever.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I actually don't even know if they even spoke to each other.
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
You would think so, but
you would think so, but
I think that.
you would think they would meet too. So.
Yeah.
They're not
well,
that far apart.
The full scale thing was just basically scuba divers and dragging the lake and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And
the
once they
full
didn't find the
scale.
bodies, then it
The
was
full
just like,
scale was the U.S. Coast Guard came in and they, had some scuba divers come down and they did.
Helicopters.
And the helicopters and kind of searching for bodies and things like that. And initially they just searched within a tiny little radius of where the women's stuff was found. And then they expanded it, a couple days later, they expanded it 6 miles along the coast or along the lakeshore.
Yeah, kind of to the southwest, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I when I saw that, I assumed the currents must move from east to west there, and that has to be the reasoning, I guess.
I presume that that's accurate. During this time, a lot of other witnesses, reliable or not, came forward. They said, hey, some young women went missing. If you guys happened to be on the beach, if anybody has information, let us know. And a lot of the stories started to conflict what the original couple had said. But the investigators kind of all agreed that they found that first report to be the most reliable. And then, to me, that's not so weird. I think they were able to say, these people went and did this. It's weird.
They left their stuff.
And it's pretty clear that they saw what happened.
Yeah.
Versus, 9,000 people on a beach, 3 young women, could be any 3 young women.
Exactly.
You
I'm
could
sure there was
totally
a
have
lot of that. Yeah.
mistaken a group, for that group and given a different story.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
the police did pretty much say this is at least the start of what had happened here.
Yeah, I don't think they ever got any actual certifiable other witnesses to those women actually being on that beach. I mean,
No.
people that you would 100% trust, because again, you put the word out to the public, and of course, a lot of people are going to think, "Oh, sure, I saw him."
There are a couple
Yeah,
other
but-
things that did happen, and we're
The
going to talk
film.
about that right now. Yeah, more witnesses kind of started to come forward, and one guy actually turned out had been doing like home videos, just filming
Home
his
movies.
family and his trip, and he had footage of 2 separate boats that the police identified as boats of interest, basically. I haven't found this footage anywhere online, but though to be fair, I didn't look very hard.
I tried, but I've
So
never
if
seen it.
somebody happens to find it, great, send it to us. But
I kind of feel like if the guy was filming his family on the
home
beach,
videos, yeah.
then they would have been in the background
That's how I feel, too.
and probably unrecognizable.
And it's 1966. Well, maybe recognizable. So what the footage caught basically was these 2 different boats that they thought were a little suspect. One was a fiberglass 16 to 18 foot trimaran.
Tri-hull.
What?
I've heard it called trimaran, but I think it's really what they mean is tri-hull.
Well, it says a trimaran runabout with a 3-hull design.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means necessarily.
Well, it
Okay,
means,
Joe,
like,
so explain what you think it
it's
is.
not that
Yeah.
important, but what I think
It's
it
a
probably
little
is.
important.
Yeah, well, I think it probably is. It's like, your average little motor runabout is like you get a V hull, which is basic, comes down to a single keel.
Uh-huh.
And on the tri hull, there's a central keel, and then there's 2 outer keels also, and then there's 2 what they call tunnels in between them.
Oh,
Like this.
I know exactly what you're talking
So you
about.
see
The
what I'm
bottom of the
saying?
boat has two arcs in
Two
the
arcs
base
in
of
the bottom,
on
yeah,
the
and so-
bottom of it.
And it's
Yes.
a flatter.
Yeah, it's a more flatter, more square design. I mean,
That makes so much
yeah,
more
that's-
sense.
That
that's
makes
a
way more
tri-hull.
sense than the other tri-hull.
Yeah.
I've never seen a motorized trimaran. I mean,
Yeah.
sailboats, yeah. But,
Yeah, well, that's.
yeah.
I was like, that's such a distinctive boat to be a true 3 individual hulls.
Yeah.
Just like, kind of like a
That would be a
catamaran.
little weird.
I was like, that's
Yeah.
so strange.
Yeah.
This is- okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Now it all
that
makes
makes way
sense.
more sense because when I Googled it, I was like, wow, I think people would have remembered that, but okay.
I did the same
Yeah,
thing.
so
Sure, why not?
that's a little different.
Yeah. So that boat, this person who was filming was able to see, and the police, from the descriptions, it sounds like the image was clear enough, at least, that they were able to see that there was 1 guy and 3 women on there, and the guy seemed to match At least, kind of. He was wearing his a boat jacket.
His
We've
boat
decided
jacket,
that is.
life jacket,
and he
something.
had black curly hair, and the women, enough.
Probably their bathing suits are probably how they matched them, because I think it was two
And
were in
hair color,
bikinis.
yeah.
Well, it's black and white.
Right, but you can tell if it's
Well,
darker
you
or
can
lighter.
get a good, darker or lighter. But I think two of them were in bikinis and one was in a one piece,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember right.
The film, I don't think they really got a 100%.
Well, they
ID.
didn't. So
Yeah.
there's this other boat that was a 26 to 28 foot Trojan cabin cruiser.
That's a big boat.
I don't know what that is either.
It's a big boat.
Trojan.
Yeah.
That's not a huge boat, really, but
Well, it's,
you know,
just it's a 25, 30 foot
Yeah,
big boat. It's got a big cabin on it.
Could
Yeah.
one call it a houseboat?
No.
not really. I mean, you could live on a 25 footer, but it'd be kind of cramped. But when you're talking bigger boats, you're talking like 35 to 40 feet. Then you're getting into big boat territory.
But you can't,
But with a little cabin-
this is important to me.
Yeah.
A layman could look at that boat and say it's a houseboat. Does it look like there's a little cabin on the top?
Nah.
Houseboats are trailers with pontoons under them,
No.
basically.
Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
But a cabin cruiser is a boat,
With
and
a-
it's got just a big enclosed cabin area.
Yeah.
It's much more distinctive. It's not like think of a basic rowboat design, and you slap a big cabin on the top of it that takes maybe the first third or first half, and that's it. You see the ones like the ones you always see guys doing the big fishing expeditions on TV, and that's kind of cabin cruiser style.
yeah, it's,
bigger boat.
Essentially. Yeah.
Okay. That one was seen with 3 men on it and 3 women who
Might have.
been matched vaguely the description of our 3 missing ladies.
It's just so hard to imagine a boat with 3 women on it. I could see why these really stood out.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the problem here is, of course, that neither of these boats had names printed on them, painted on them anywhere.
Or if they did, they weren't discernible.
They weren't discernible. So there was no way to identify these boats. So they were kind of dead leads. But investigators also had some reports that they deemed to be reliable that Renee and Patricia and Ann had been seen walking along the beach and eating a little bit after 3 p.m. on the 2nd, that some miles away from where their belongings were. It sounds like that the women had swum out to meet this boat, gotten on this smaller boat, been taken some miles away, got off, got something to eat while waiting for the larger boat to come pick them up, and then gotten on the larger boat and then never gotten off the larger boat, perhaps, or maybe.
Moral of the story is if you're 3 women in bathing suits on a beach, probably a lot of guys with boats are going to approach you and say, "Hey, you want to ride my boat?"
And maybe don't.
And
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
that leads into something. I don't remember where I read it, but I seem to remember that somebody else had come forward saying that they had seen the women swimming in the water, and the guy had come up and done just that. Hey, you want to come on board? And one of them had said, "No, we can't. I'm married." As in, "Hey, I'm off limits. Get away, dude." So that's an interesting thing that this story comes out where this guy was turned down, and then the main story comes along and says they just happily climbed on board some random boat.
Yeah.
They might have been somebody they knew, though. I mean, or a friend of a friend, or God
Yes,
knows
it
what.
could have been somebody that they knew.
Yeah.
Yes, it could have been.
Well, I mean, that's interesting to me because I saw that one place and it was kind of like, okay, one place. But also, I guess it's never explained how somebody heard that conversation.
What conversation?
Well, it would have
was
been the
that?
guy driving the boat who said they turned him down.
Oh.
Because
Oh.
I seem to remember it being the guy who was driving the boat. They told him, "No, I'm married."
And somebody
I do
overheard
remember.
No, the driver
No,
then reported it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Then he I remember seeing that somewhere, but I've never.
I don't know how much value there is
Yeah, I
to
don't
it. It's
know
just
either.
it's interesting to me, because it's
Yeah.
very counter to the narrative.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, with that,
We'll just leave that as it is.
that wrench in the.
Okay.
I love throwing wrenches.
You do. Patricia and Ann are reported to have been very strong swimmers who could swim about 20 to 30 miles.
Good for them. I
Renee
couldn't,
was
I couldn't
reported.
walk that distance. Holy crap.
Renee was reported to have been a quote fair swimmer, but by the people who are like, a strong swimmer, 30 miles. I don't know what fair means. I mean, I report myself to be a fair swimmer because I could save my life, but I wouldn't qualify myself as a particularly great
Can you
swimmer.
Can you swim a mile?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, if I had to. I mean, it wouldn't be a fun mile, but
Yeah, I kind of for me it would depend on current and stuff like that, but it would be a lot of treading water and a lot of breaks and just floating on my back.
well, you just learn I mean, this is part of. I'm sorry, everyone. This is part of the cruise ship training, but there's a certain way that you can swim that you could just swim for forever. Obviously, it's not like battling strong currents or anything like that, but it'll get you to a place, kind of.
I think we've talked about this before. The fact that if I ever go over in a situation like that, I am screwed.
Yeah.
I can swim, but I am absolutely not buoyant.
Yeah.
I sink like a rock.
I don't have that problem.
I'm not that buoyant either. Yeah, but
I'm pretty buoyant.
yeah.
Filled with more hot air or something.
Uh-huh.
So I guess it sounds like all three of them were pretty strong
They could
swimmers.
swim.
They could swim. So
They
pretty
weren't
much
novice.
all of the investigators, both official and armchair, agree that 3 accidental drownings, highly unlikely, especially with their bodies not ever having washed on shore.
I know we're not.
We're not talking the ocean where they could have been devoured by sharks, right? I mean, it's
Right.
Lake Michigan.
I mean, I haven't looked at the theory section yet, but is accidental drowning even in there?
No.
And well, I don't think it should be because you've just made a great point. 3 bodies, one of them should have washed ashore.
Yeah, you would think so.
And
I mean, there
and
ain't no
for all
sharks in that
3 of
lake.
them to have drowned accidentally at the same time seems pretty crazy. But
Yeah, a little
Unless they
bit.
didn't, unless they were helped to drown.
Yeah, unless
and
they were
helped to not wash ashore.
yeah, and that isn't accidental anymore.
No.
All right, so there are some more things that we're going to talk about, but I'm going to weave those into theories. So before we get to theories, let's take a quick break.
A horse walks into a bar. The door hangs open behind her as she lazily looks around at the other patrons. She sighs and stares down at the hairy pig tending the bar. He snorts and trots away to whisper to the cranky old hens sitting in the other end of the bar. They know why she's there and they're ready. Revolution has come to the farm and your kitchen. Fresh, high-quality ingredients make a real difference, and it's so important to know where your food comes from. And for less than $10 per person per meal, Blue Apron delivers easy-to-follow recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients, courtesy of over 150 local farms, ranches, and fisheries across the U.S., right to your door. And because Blue Apron ships the exact amount of each ingredient required for a recipe, there's no food waste. And one of the meals available in February is cashew chicken stir fry with tango mandarins and jasmine rice. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/thinking. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/thinking. Blue Apron, a better way to cook and keep animals out of bars.
And we're back. Hope you like that word from our sponsors. We're going to talk about theories now.
There is, yeah.
First theory is gonna sound like one of those things we throw in here as a joke, but it actually, I think, personally, is the most viable of all of our theories.
It's a possible one. Yeah.
This theory is called the horse syndicate people theory.
Nay.
No, Winnie.
Remember how we talked about the Tricolor Stables and George Jane and Silas Jane a little bit? I mentioned it, and then I said, remember that? And then some people were like, no, talk about Silas Jane now. Because they know who Silas Jane is. Okay. Well, I'm going to start off by saying if you go out and Google Tricolor Stables, you have to Google Tricolor Stables bombing or something like that, because there is a Tricolor Stables that exists in Florida, and it is not the same. I think it has no relation to this one. Don't even go there.
Well, no, go there. We don't want to drive away their business.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. Don't
Feel free to go there.
associate them with what we're about to talk
Yeah.
about.
Okay.
Is what I mean.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We don't want any lawsuits.
The name Silas Jane may have rung a bell for some of you because he's kind of famous in the Chicago area, / connected and implicated in a number of unsolved murders in the Chicago area. Let's start from the top a little bit, shall we? Mm-hmm. Silas was the eldest of 11 children, and his half-brother George was the product of an extramarital affair on his mother's part. Silas was born in 1907, and George was born in 1923, so they were 16 years apart.
I guess they weren't too close as children.
I don't think so.
No.
I kind of don't think
No.
so. No, especially with the prison time and everything. But you're going to get into that.
In 1924, when George was just 1 year old, Silas was convicted of rape and sent to spend a year in the state reformatory. Just a year for rape. You're welcome, everyone.
It does seem kind of light, although he would have been, what, 17?
He was 17 at the time.
Well, okay.
It's
We
still-
won't even go
it
there.
still seems a little light.
We're not going
It's a
there.
completely different world
In the
at that time.
50s, Silas and two of his other brothers worked at a stable, then eventually became known for their horse trading and training skills, and eventually opened up their own stable called the Idle Hour. And then later, I'm not quite sure when, but George opened his own stable, Tricolor,
Yeah, that was years later.
years later. Silas made money selling
Crappy horses?
subpar horses
Oh.
to rich fathers who had daughters who wanted to go into horse riding competitions, and there was a certain caliber of horse that you needed for something like that, and Silas didn't really care and just lied and convinced these fathers that these horses were of that caliber.
He would upsell these people in a big way.
Well,
So, I mean,
these horses were horses. He would go out and catch these horses from the wild and turn around and sell them and be like, "Oh, it just needs to be broken in."
Well, it's just kind of like what your average used car salesman does today, really.
I would say a little worse than
Oh,
that.
yeah, no,
but
he would take horses that were bad performers or potentially ready in those times to go to the glue factory, and he would resell them as champion horses.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like a used car salesman would.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Idle Hour, which was Silas's stable, you remember, was in Chicago and was frequented by a lot of Chicago gangsters at the time. Silas, he's the kind of guy who, so since he had this rape conviction when he was 17, he was ineligible for the draft. So when the war came along, he couldn't get drafted, so he
poor guy.
decided to just sell horse meat instead.
That's how he made. That's how he
How
survived.
he made money, yeah. And then he made a lot of friends with a lot of pretty
Questionable
famous
characters?
gangsters in Chicago at the time, and they often frequented Idle Hour. And though he was a savvy businessman, he was a huge bully and a heavy drinker. And I don't think he had a stake in George's Tricolor stables at all.
No.
But they were rivals.
Yes.
Silas did what he does best and planted a car bomb on George's car.
Well, to be
No.
fair, he didn't do it himself.
Well, he had someone do it.
Yeah, and we don't know that he was behind that.
I'm sorry,
although
you're right.
It's strongly suspected that he was.
Wrongly suspected.
Again, yeah, they're brothers, they're half brothers, but apparently no love lost.
No.
They were actually business competitors.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, that car bomb went off when a woman named Sherilyn Rude went to move George's car for him.
I've always suspected that perhaps George had an inkling that maybe the car was not safe to drive.
I don't know.
Because he just said, "Hey, you mind moving my car for me?"
Well, it turns out, after that, he rigged this system with a really long pole with his key attached to it so that he could start the car from a safe distance.
He had a
Every
he had
time.
a long stick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Smart move.
Get off and, put his stick away and go start the car again.
This is my car starting stick.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
obviously, at that point, then you want to put the bomb in the passenger side door, facing outward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do. Well, George eventually was actually murdered.
It took like 3 attempts at least before they got him.
But he
was
was
a regular
actually
Rasputin.
murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Police, of course, assumed that Silas was to blame for the bomb and for the murder, but they couldn't prove it, so there's that. Patricia, you will remember, had her prize-winning horse stabled at the Tricolor, which George owned. The bombing was in 65, so just a year before the women disappeared.
Went vomitous.
Before they left.
Yeah.
Before they split.
Split, yeah. In March of 1966, Patricia acquired what is quoted as a face injury, which may have been inflicted by a fist, unquote.
So weird.
Or a doorknob.
description.
Or stairs.
Yeah.
Such a weird description.
When her family asked her what happened, she kind of brushed it off and just said that she was having some problems with the, quote, horse syndicate people, which is where we get the title for this theory. The theory goes, then, that the women who rode at Tricolor all the time had witnessed the bombing or the placement of the bomb or
one of them.
Or one of them, or could somehow otherwise implicate Silas in the crime. And so he was bullying them into not talking, but decided that that wasn't quite enough, and so he needed to have them murdered.
Makes sense.
So the thing to keep in mind is the car bomb went off in 65. Silas went to trial, and I think it was a 4-month-long trial. And the trial had ended just the month before they disappeared. So I think it was the beginning of June that he'd been cleared of the case.
He essentially was acquitted.
Yeah.
To add to this theory, there are a lot of alsos in this theory. To add to this theory, in late 66, Silas claimed to have bodies of 3 women buried under his house, and police took this claim seriously and planned to dig it up, but I don't know what happened.
I have heard about this claim, I've actually heard it said that he told police that he had 3 bodies buried under his house.
Yeah.
Why would anybody do that?
Because he was insane.
He was a bragger.
He was insane. He was legit insane. He also his phone number was found in the purse of at least one of the women. I think it was Patricia, but I can't be certain. I think it was in Patricia's purse, but it was in one of the purses.
I have heard this also, but was it his personal phone number or his number at the stable?
I think it was his personal phone number.
Okay.
I think it would have been said that it was the phone number of the stable.
phone number.
Yeah, and then it would have been the Idle Hour stable, which none of them
they weren't boarding their horses at or doing anything there.
They're using Tricolor. Also, of note, Silas is suspected in the 1955 murders of 3 young boys known as the Peterson-Schuessler murders, and he's also implicated in the murders of the Grimes sisters. And then, as we said,
the murder of George, his brother.
The murder, and then also there are some other less "quote-unquote" noteworthy.
Now, when he took out George finally, how did he get him? I forgot.
He was shot in the head while playing cards.
Yeah, through a basement window.
Oh, an accident then.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I think, is it the Grimes sisters, the ones who, or no, that was somebody different who was calling him out and going to report to the authorities his scam on what he did with horses, selling crappy horses as super fancy horses.
That was somebody else who also happened to die.
Yes, who happened to disappear and die. Yes.
Yeah. Also, Patricia's boyfriend at the time was an ex-con cowboy who lived in California, and
that was John Paul Jones, right?
Yeah, and he maintains that he was innocent. By the way, I don't think he was married. I know I said earlier the boyfriends might have been married, but I don't think this guy was.
I heard that one of them was married, but not necessarily
I think that Anne's
both.
boyfriend might have been married, but Patricia's ex-con California cowboy boyfriend.
Yeah, John Jones,
I don't think was.
No, I think he was in California. I think
But
he had a
he
good
was
alibi.
Kind of shady character.
Well, yeah.
I know there's a theory out there that says the reason that these 3 young women had Silas's phone number was because they were working as call girl, date girls for him, and that he had set up a date
or
for
just
them.
company.
Yeah, something like that.
Not necessarily anything sexual, but
no, but like paid date time or whatever. And then that's why there were 3 men on that large boat and 3 young women on that large boat, and that, I don't know, something went wrong, I guess, or I don't know.
Or they decided to sell them, kidnap them and sell them. But the thing about the whole murder thing by Silas is that he waited a long time, like a whole year between the bombing and the actual disappearance of the women. And also, he'd already been on trial and essentially acquitted, so it's like, you couldn't be tried again for it anyway. So
I actually don't think that he waited all that long, though. I mean, he probably felt like he was going to get away with it, and then he had to go to, he gets arrested and goes through trial. And I could see this being a situation of cleaning up all the loose ends just in case.
But he had already been to trial and acquitted by the time they disappeared, right?
He had been to trial. I don't know if he was acquitted.
Yeah, and the thing about it is there were other witnesses to the guys actually planting the bomb in the car, I heard. And these people, their names were published in the papers, and none of them got killed.
True.
And there's no evidence that any of the 3 women actually saw anything or knew anything.
Well, but it could also be, so there's the whole, she was having problems with the horse syndicate people, and that bruise could have simply have come from a horse. she's working with animals. And
Horses do that kind of
horses
stuff.
do that kind of stuff.
But that was the reason. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, but what I'm saying here is that if she's having problems with them, and somehow Silas is involved in this, and she knows, she could have foolishly mouthed off and said, "Listen, cut it out, or I'm going to tell everybody that I know something and I saw you there." I mean, making claims that could have put her in the hot seat and was not a good negotiating tactic.
Here's my two things about that. First of all, the fact that she said somebody punched her when, in fact, it would have been really easy for her to say, "Oh, a horse hit me," means that she probably was trying to tell someone something, right? To me, at least. Second of all, Silas was involved in so many shady things that it doesn't have to be even a little bit connected to the bombing in my mind, that they, at least one of them, could have known something about anything that he had done.
Yeah, you
and
hang out.
said, "Hey, we're gonna tell."
Yeah, you hang out in the stables, you probably hear some scuttlebutt.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it wasn't just them talking to George or talking to Silas or whatever. It was like, there's all kinds of people hanging around. There were other mobsters hanging around there who maybe wanted to, pick up on these girls, impress these girls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, who knows what they actually heard?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
of course, it's all hearsay also. So
Yeah.
it's like, whether it was any danger to Silas, I'm not so sure.
So back to the whole date on the boat thing. So you were saying, so I'm assuming, I just want to flesh that out a little bit. You said, and then something went wrong. I'm assuming that means that something went wrong and one of them died, and to cover it up, they killed all three and weighted him and dropped him to the bottom?
That seems to be the kind of going theory.
Okay.
There's a lot of theories that involve that sort of, and then something went wrong and they had to kill all three of them, and why, I don't know. But
Yeah, there's always, I kind of like the white slavery theory myself.
that's your favorite theory for literally everything.
Oh, I know.
We could
I
be
know.
talking
Doesn't
about
matter.
when
D.D.
did monkeys...
Cooper. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know.
Actually, in that area, it was an issue.
It still is.
It still is,
I mean,
but at that time, it was still an issue.
slavery is always a thing.
It's happening a lot right now, yeah.
But, I mean, it's possible. It's possible, certainly.
I think that's a kind of a weak one in this particular case, but it is
Yeah.
completely plausible based on the people they were hanging around with. So
Yeah.
I noticed that you don't have on your list any popular killers.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised.
I mean, Silas Jane's a pretty popular killer, let's be honest here.
Known convicted killers.
Okay.
How about that? Okay, so we're not going to debate that.
Yeah. No.
I have two that I didn't know if you wanted to talk about.
If you want to,
Okay.
that's fine with me.
So there's one, and I'm going to probably butcher the pronunciation of this town, but it's the Ypsilanti Ripper. John Norman Collins, or Chapman. His name is different in places.
Yeah.
But he's the guy who between 67 and 69, he killed like 7 or 8 women. He started out
Allegedly.
like once a year, once every 8 months, and then